what we're here to say, as we've said from the beginning, the registration of voters is not a political issue. The registration of voters is a national issue. And as we've highlighted in the 2006 EU Observer Report, they identified a number of flaws. 20,000 mistakes in the electoral roll, 9.7% of the votes were invalid, enumerators in management they're hired, the capability of those people was all misplaced, number of flaws. Now we're here to essentially ensure that those flaws do not occur, because that leads to the integrity and credibility of the electoral process. We have, as we've said, we are very grateful to the Australian and New Zealand governments. They've facilitated 2 experts who carry out these sort of logistical arrangements. They have provided them, they're here, they're working with our team, with the Elections Office, they're working together with the logistical expert from RFMF, who obviously knows the terrain. As you know, that we are going to carry out this voter registration within 6 to 8 weeks' time. The bulk of the voters, the bulk of Fijians will be registered within 6 to 8 weeks. And for the first time in Fiji's history, all of these voters will have an ID card with biometrics in it. So it is going to minimize, if not completely eliminate, fraud. The last elections you had a voter turnout of 101% in one of the constituencies. There are a number of flaws with the electoral process, and many political parties in fact had highlighted that. So this is a apolitical issue. I also urge the media to focus in on the issues as opposed to just being reactive to what politicians are saying. Just because a politician makes a comment, please verify the facts. You have seen what is happening in that room. They are focused on ensuring that the voter registration commences on the 3rd of July. That's the date we've set ourselves. It's a very tight time frame, but it can be done and it must be done. So that is primarily what we are doing. And I'd like the PS, perhaps you want to highlight some of the work that they have been doing and how long the team is here for.
As you've heard in the earlier briefing, what the team is focusing on right now is finding alternative venues for voter registration, mainly in the urban centers around Fiji. They finished with the Suva-Lami corridor, and they're moving on to Nausori, moving on to Lambasa and to the west. They have, you would know that we had advertised earlier for the recruitment of EVR clerks. We have a database of the numbers that we will need for this exercise, 1,150 in all, plus a possible reserve team of 200. The team that's working in the operations room has already identified the 385 people who will be team leaders for the teams that are going to go out to the fields. They've also identified trainers. When Code Inc., the company that's providing this equipment to Fiji, when they come in, the first 2 weeks will be used training personnel who will then go out to train the EVR clerks. So that will happen for the first 2 weeks before the 3rd of July when EVR will be launched.
Okay. Questions?
Ma'am, what is the response like to your advertisement for EVR clerks? How many?
In total, we've got a database of over 2,000 applications. Some of those applications came in late. Some were actually lodged prior to the ad, before we even put out the ad. But for those that applied within time and met all the requirements, we've got 1,400 applications.
How many voter registration venues are you looking at?
The dots that you saw on the map, that's 1,150 venues. It's a possibility this team has a mandate. They can decrease that number, they can even increase that number. Like I've said, at the moment, they're looking at alternative venues.
We have purchased also 380 units.
Yes, sir.
380 units, kits have been purchased at approximately close to $4 million, $3.9 million, yeah? 3.9 million Fijian dollars. Now essentially what these kits will have, and you will see actually before I say that, in the next few weeks we've also drafted up advertisements. You'll see television advertisements, you'll see radio advertisements, you'll see newspaper advertisements that will be going out into the public arena, educating the people, in fact encouraging them to come and register, and secondly telling them, giving them information about the need to vote and for them to have a say, and about the fact that their vote will have one value, it will be equal as everybody else, and how it is important for them to cast the vote. And thirdly, that voter education, that registration process will inform them as to where they can go and register, and what dates registration centers will be available. It will be a massive public campaign. As you can see, that with the over 1,000 locations that the PS has highlighted, it is an enormous logistical arrangement, as you know. To have about 1,100 registration clerks register the Fijian population spread over 110 islands between 6 to 8 weeks, with biometrics, with ensuring, like the PS highlighted, ensuring there's electricity, etc. available there, generators, so we can go out, issue them with the ID cards. Then and there, on the spot. Never been done before. And this is going to be our first step into having a modern electoral system in place. So you will see the voter registration, the publicity will be going out in respect of the registration. What we'll also be doing is ensuring that all the people, as the PS has highlighted, will be trained in that area. It creates transparency. The manner in which these people have been selected has been because of their skill sets. You will have, as we said, that you'll be told what information to bring for you to register yourself. So you may bring your FNPF card, your birth certificates, your passports, etc. that confirms your identity. They will register the information on the spot. They will then issue your card on the spot with your photograph and your fingerprint. Thumbprint? Thumbprint on the spot. You will have your ID card. Now when you go to cast your vote in 2014, they will be scanned. They'll see your photo pop up. They know it's you. You minimize fraud. And everybody is given a sense that they actually have a voice and a say. There are, of course, many people who have not turned 18 or will not be 18 when we go to register. They will obviously have the opportunity to be registered. And they will learn, as the team is working that out also, how following this bulk registration, registration centers will continue to be open in certain locations. How we work that out, we're still working on that particular process. As you know, for example, in Australia, you can go and change your voter registration details or register at post offices. So it's making those centers readily available. So we want to also focus on the young, on the youth, because there are people who are, for example, as we speak, are 16 in 2014, they'll be 18, they'll be eligible to vote. So our focus is to ensure that we register as many people as possible in the first round. It does have implications in terms of the way that we move the electoral process going forward.
What is the potential number of registered voters we're looking at for Fiji going into this process and into the election?
640. About 640,000. Could be slightly more. But also a substantial portion of the voters for the 2014 elections will be below the age of 35. We also remind you that many of those voters will be voters for the first time. So, for example, somebody who was 20 years old in January 2006, before the 2006 elections, did not vote. But they're now 26, 27 years old, and they have not voted. They will be voting for the first time. So we have to ensure that they probably are married now, they probably have children now. We want all of these people to have a say, and they can have a say by registering themselves to vote.
Now, along with this, of course, the other civic education program is underway, and how is that coming along?
The civic education program has already been started, as you know, by many NGOs. They're already going out and doing the work. As you know, there was a women's forum some weeks back. They discussed issues pertaining to the Constitution. I understand CCF has started that. Government, of course, will be starting theirs in a few weeks' time. We are in the phase of printing many of the materials. But people are already talking about it. There is no one person that says, okay, let's start, then it starts. People are already talking about it. I'm sure many of the political parties are already talking about issues pertaining to the Constitutional Commission and the submissions they should make. So that is well underway. And I think the material that needs to be also put out in the public sphere needs to talk about the values that we should have in the Constitution. Because, you know, as we've said previously, and even if you look at the Reeves Commission, submissions that were made to Reeves Commission, many of it was basically focused on which ethnic group should get which seats, as opposed to the values and principles that we should uphold in our Constitution. So if, for example, people say one of the values that they adhere to is accountability or transparency, then how does that get translated into constitutional speak? For example, you know, some people have said we must have a government that gives us running water, housing, electricity. What they are essentially talking about is socio-economic rights. Should we put that under the Bill of Rights? So there are many values and principles that we, you know, need to think about and discuss in terms of accountability. Some people may say, well, we think government should last for 3 years, like in Australia, or in America, 4 years. Or should it be 5 years as we've had as it is in UK? And on many occasions previously, people have not actually thought about these issues. As the NCBBF had discussed, their recommendation was to reduce the size of Parliament by up to 25% if possible. So the thinking is, do we reduce the size of Parliament, pay them well, so you attract better quality people? Should you have a Senate? Should you not have a Senate? If you have a Senate, do you elect them? Do you select them? You never elected senators in Fiji. So these are the things that the everyday people must educate themselves about. We must educate them about, not tell them what they should think, but tell them that these are the things that they can think about. And what are your views, so they can go and make submissions to the Constitutional Commission. As the Prime Minister has said right from day one, we want people to go and talk about anything they want before the Constitutional Commission. It needs to be focused on what they want in the Constitution.
Mr. Sayed-Khaiyum, Constitutional Commission member, Mr. VUNIWAQA has raised a concern that they may not be, that they'll just be challenged in getting things off the ground by mid-June, in which they had planned to open office and start operations. Can government assist in a sort of way to help them get going by that time frame?
Yes, we've had discussions when Professor Aiyaz was here. As you know, we made available the offices at the parliamentary complex. We've also made available to them, you know, sort of junior staff, people like, you know, say, people who can make tea, etc. We've also given an undertaking to supply, say, Hansard reporters. We need to find the Hansard reporters. But as you know, the chair of the Constitutional Commission is very much jealous about his independence, and they themselves will be selecting their own staff. The conversation we had before he left was that they're going to put out advertisements. They're also working on a budget. He's also had responses from multilateral agencies, including various countries, to offer budget funding for them, and they want to run their own finances. And government has said this is fine. The chair of the commission has had meeting with the Prime Minister before he left, and there were some of the discussions that they had. So the government is very comfortable with that, and you will probably see in the next week or so a lot of traction by the chair of the commission in terms of you know, job advertisements, in terms of requirements. He has also identified, we understand, a couple of other experts that will be helping them, for example, with the drafting, etc. But please understand that the Constitutional Commission is not run by government. The Constitutional Commission, the decisions it makes in respect of where they will go, what time they will hear submissions, who they will hire, that's their choice. That's the level of independence that they enjoy.
What about funding? Because Professor Guy did say that some of the people have come forward, and government can give money, never mind they will be independent.
Yeah. And once the chair finalizes the budget, then we'll see exactly you know, where the funding sources are coming from. In fact, at one stage there was an issue raised that what if the entire funding comes from outside government sources? We are also comfortable with that. And the chair has also highlighted that he wants the entire funding process to be completely transparent. So everybody will know what's their budget, where they've spent it, how they've spent it, who they have paid to what will be the salary base of all these, the people that they hire. So we're waiting for the budget to be finalized, and then we'll have discussions with them, and also of course the donor agencies will have discussion with them. He's already talking to them.
Government is paying for the whole voter registration process. How much will it be in total?
Well, we are again with the logistics. That's why it was very important to get the logistical arrangements finalized. Because, for example, as the PS will tell you, if they decide, okay, this week we'll be up in Nandi, covering the Sorry Highlands, how many vehicles you need? If you're sending 5, 6, 10 people to go and register, they'll need lunch packs, so they will spend the night. All those sorts of things need to be all worked out. So it's a massive exercise. And once all of that is worked out with the experts, then we'll be able to have a final budget. But as you know that we've already been allocated 5.9, we've expended $3.9 million of that with coding.
Just a question.
Sorry, there's been so much jumping up and down about the appointment of the military officer leading the registration team that's been appointed. Were there concerns from Australia, New Zealand, your partners during this process, about that appointment?
Well, I'll get the PS to first answer because she's been dealing with the Australians and Kiwis, but they definitely have not raised any issue with us at all.
They haven't raised any issue with me either. The military has been involved, RFMF officer has been involved with the Australians and New Zealand, the Australian expert and the New Zealand expert since they began work here, and no issues have been raised with them.
We had a meeting the day that the New Zealand expert arrived.
Yes.
We had a meeting at Missouri Airport with them, together with RFMF presidents, together with the heads of the missions from Australia and New Zealand. There was no issue because I think they also know, as any logical person would know, that this is purely a logistical exercise. This is purely to get the job done. There is no way that anybody can, by having RFMF, it does not mean in any way that you are somehow or the other obfuscating the system, somehow or the other you're altering the system, somehow or the other the RFMF is going around planting a bug. I mean, this is all quite superfluous comments made by certain politicians and paranoia. I think we need to be all very constructive. We all need to work as a nation to ensure that the logistics is worked out, that everybody gets registered, so then everybody can have a vote.
Just from your side, because Mr. Garcia has publicly stated, one of the comments he's made in relation to voter registration is the involvement of military officers and your involvement is casting serious doubt in the process leading up to elections. What do you have to say to that? Because you know this has been said before by Garcia, by Chaudhry and others.
I think we've adequately answered the questions, but all I want to point out is due to the EU report. Like I said, the EU report had a so-called independent supervisor of elections, had a so-called independent electoral commission, but look at what happened in the 2006 elections.
So you basically believe there's no doubt being cast from the appointments and all these things that's happening?
The work speaks for itself. Like I said, this is not a time for political point scoring. There is nothing constructive coming out of the politicians. Absolutely nothing. Nor have the politicians in any way being stopped from coming and putting queries to us.
Have they
Why
approached you directly?
Absolutely not. Why aren't they going to the media? If they genuinely believe that there's some form of credibility issues, why don't they come and speak to the Permanent Secretary for Elections, responsible for elections?
So there's been no approach at all?
Absolutely not. Have they approached you? No. Why don't they come and speak to office? They're just simply political point scoring. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Naga.